The Censor's Notebook. So this is going to be a video review about this novel by Liliana Koropka, translated from Romanian into English by Monica Cure and published by Seven Stories Press UK, published in 2022. It's a heavy book. It has 480 pages. And it's an unusual book in that it appears almost like nonfiction, but in reality it is fiction. Now, Liliana Koropka is not only a writer, she also works at an institution that studies censorship in communist Romania. And so this is what this novel is about. And it's written as if it were nonfiction. It starts with an exchange of letters between a character called Emilia Codrescu, who is a former censor who worked as a censor in communist Romania in the arts and literatures division of the, let me see if I remember, the General Directorate of the Press and Publications, abbreviated as GDPP. That's supposedly the institution that censored books during communism. So the censor, Emilia Codrescu, defected to West Germany in 1974, and when she defected, she stole a notebook from the institution where she worked, which was supposedly written by another censor called Filoftea Moldovean. So she contacts the author, Liliana Koropka, or actually the alter ego of the author, because again, this all appears to be nonfiction, but in fact it is fiction. So there is this exchange of letters between the censor who supposedly stole the notebook and the author. Then there is a preamble in which the preamble is written in the name of the author, in which Liliana Koropka explains how censorship used to work in Romania. And then we have a part called Confessions of a Notebook Thief, written in the voice of Emilia Codrescu, in which she explains how she stole the notebook, and she explains that in Romania, censorship was everything that was done in the censorship office was state secret, and that everything had to be burned at the end. So the fact that this notebook exists, which she stole, is obviously a big deal. And and by the way, she also explains that in censorship didn't mean only that they cut parts, they also edit parts. And then we have the main part of the book, which is the reader's notebook, which was supposed to include basically notes of the censor, notes about the books that the censor was reading and censoring. But in reality, this part called the reader's notebook actually becomes a sort of a censor. It becomes the diary of the censor, in which the censor explains what happened in the office, and she talks about, she gives us her opinions about life and literature in general, and even about censorship. So it's a really absurd book, but also serious, of course. So in the part, the reader's notebook, we also have scenes that happen in the office between the censor Filoftea Moldovean, but also two of her colleagues, who are Rosa and Hermina. Obviously, both of them have very interesting personalities. Rosa is more of an extrovert. Hermina is a very sensitive soul. She's so sensitive that she cries when she is supposed to cut the poems or cut parts from the poems that she has to censor. And they also, all three of them, chat all the time. There is all kinds of girlish chat going on in the office, and they often imagine if the poets that they're reading are handsome or ugly, and how they make love. And at some point they tell a story about another censor, whose name I forgot, but this other censor at some point was dating in real life the poet whom at work she was censoring. So at some point, I think the censor came out and she told the poet that she was his censor. And then they both swore eternal love, and each of them abandoned their profession, and then they ran away to a small village and started life all over again. So, of course, all of this is pretty absurd and also pretty funny. Other parts in the reader's notebook include useful tips from novels. Because the censor, when she was reading novels, she was reading them in a very literal way. So she was taking from novels, for example, tips on how to make your hair soft and shiny, tips about how to, get rid of a stain, or how to, I don't know, how to make a face mask or a cream from natural ingredients, etc., etc. So as I said, all of this is pretty funny, but also rather serious. And then we also have reflections on life, reflections on censorship. And I think toward the end there, the ending is that in fact the real censorship doesn't happen in this notebook, that the real censorship takes place in the other place, usually wherever we're not. So meaning that the censorship obviously first happens in the mind of the writer who censors himself or herself. So this is a novel that I highly recommend, especially for people interested in Eastern Europe and in the history of communism, although you should be warned that it's very long and it does have some tedious parts. So this was the first video in a series of videos that I intend to make about different books that I am reading, because I got too lazy and I don't want to write anymore.